Welcome to Keeping Up with Our Community, a podcast for and about Romeo Community Schools. Each week, we will invite different guests to share insights about some unique aspects of our schools. This podcast is powered by the MIT TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than MIT TV. Their in-studio podcast experience allows you to record perfect audio and capture amazing video. That's all right here at the MIT TV of Romeo, Michigan. Contact them now via email for a free consultation and schedule a visit at mit.tvpodcast@gmail.com. That's mitt.tvpodcast@gmail.com. Hello, my name is Mary Ann Brush, and I am the Communications and Marketing Supervisor for Romeo Community Schools. It is my pleasure to introduce episode 16 of the Keeping Up with Our Community Schools podcast. Today's episode will focus on executive functioning and will be hosted by Mary Selden, Director of Special Services for Romeo Community Schools. Our guests today are mental health professionals Kristen Famiano, counselor at the 9th Grade Academy, Kelsey Frazier, District School Psychologist, and Chelsea Robichaud, School Social Worker at Washington Elementary. I will now turn it over to Mrs. Selden to lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mary Ann. It is my pleasure to be hosting this episode of Keeping Up with Our Community Schools podcast. After reviewing feedback in our winter 2023 climate survey, parents asked for more resources on organization and executive functioning tips for their children, as well as other wellness recommendations. Our goal is to continue to create more resources on those topics and others to help students, parents, and staff in our community. As always, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health concern that impacts your daily life, please call your doctor. If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide, please dial 988 for free confidential help 24/7 or call 911 for emergency help. Okay, ladies, let's get started. What is executive functioning? Executive functioning is a set of skills that help you get things done. These skills are controlled by an area of your brain called the frontal lobe, and they help you do things such as manage your time, pay attention, plan, organize, remember details, and multitask. Kristen, Kelsey, Chelsea, do you see students in school that struggle with executive functioning skills? And if so, what kind of educational impacts have you witnessed?
At the high school level, every classroom, there's a structure to every classroom. There's a routine. There's an order to every classroom. Students come in, they get used to the routine of the school. At the high school level, it's putting their phones in the phone holders, finding their seat. A lot of times, seating charts are put on the board. They have a routine. Sometimes it's picking up a handout on their way to their seat. And in the same way, we are attempting to teach our kids how to have some, order and prioritization within their own roles and responsibilities. As a student athlete, students are involved in many extracurricular, plays and things like that. And so it's important that we try to teach that from a big picture level. And within the classroom setting, for example, we also have seminar classes where we have lessons on some of these skills within the actual classroom. So students are attempting to learn these by observing, by just the nature of going through the flow of the day. And the idea is that as they grow and they go through the academy model at the high school, that they are going to meet the core values, the employer expectations for the profile of a graduate for when they move on. And so what do I see at my level? I see students who struggle right from the beginning, but I also see students who come in and they already have so many of these skills mastered, which is incredible. So at the high school level, it's getting used to the block schedule, going from 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And how do I regulate myself in that time? I notice often the last 15, 20 minutes of class, I might see more students in the hallway. Just students are attempting to regulate themselves from being in the classroom. Having to use the restroom, getting a drink of water, and often it's telling me that the student just needs to get up and move. And so it's helping students adjust to this. Students, they're not even realizing that that's why they're doing what they're doing. But again, a lot of our students are struggling with that different block schedule, the bell schedule, the rigors of high school, having 4 classes on red day, 4 classes on white day. How do I organize that? How do I not procrastinate so I have all 8 classes to do on one night now? How do I put in study skills? If I need tutoring, how does that fit into my schedule? So it can, having 8 classes as opposed to 6 can, add a different layer to the students. But I do believe that we do give enough support and structure to be able to help them and work through that ninth grade adjustment for them. And I'm sure at the elementary level, the classroom teachers have their routines and something similar going on as well.
Yes. Yeah. Just like Mary said, the mental skill, or like executive functioning, is a set of mental skills, like such as shifting and paying attention and planning and organizing and remembering key details. So those skills are crucial for like goal setting and work completion and impulse control, prioritizing and adapting to new experiences. So in your context, that's all of the above for secondary, and it's the same for elementary. We're always adapting to new things. We need to prioritize. We need to understand, our actions lead to this, and sometimes our students are having a hard time. It's now not always about impulse control, but understanding, my decision right now is going to impact this in the future. That's kind of hard for them to understand. That cognitive flexibility. Sometimes we'll see our students want to solve a problem one way, and then they get stuck. Well, it has to be solved this one way, but teaching them to be flexible in their thoughts and problem solving is something that we also see that we try to promote too, because that's what we see when we get stuck. We can't think outside the box. Students with deficits in executive functioning have a hard time thinking outside the box and problem solving beyond that. And then also holding on to information. We hear multi-step directions. They're the first to go. Our students can't, remember the 3-step directions. It's because they're having a hard time with their working memory. So what can we do to support them with those working memory skills? So, which a lot of elementary, it's very much like secondary. It's just kind of up a notch, by that time.
Yeah, and coming from the elementary level, we still see students are really still developing these executive functioning skills, and there are some children who struggle more than others. Educational impacts can vary depending on, what area is most impacted. In some children, executive functioning in the elementary level kind of presents as trouble with impulse control or difficulty in those regulating of emotions. I see this frequently working at the elementary level since children are still developing their emotional awareness and coping skills. For some students, these challenges demonstrate in like difficulty with school organization or time management, remembering instructions. And this seems to become more apparent as they get older because they're required to become more independent with things. I know like in the kindergarten level, a lot of it is spelled out and everything is step-by-step directions and, every schedule is posted. But as they get older, they're expected to have a little bit more responsibility. So we see that demonstrated a little bit more difficulty when you get to the older levels. And then with that following multi-step directions sometimes can be very difficult, and we see that executive functioning deficit come out there. For example, when a teacher says, get your notebook, your pencil, your Chromebook, and meet me at the carpet. Well, those are a lot of things that, a student has to hold in their brain. They have to remember, they have to organize, they have to figure out where it is, they have to get it all, go to the carpet. So there's a lot of different steps that they have to remember. So oftentimes we'll see students, they'll get to the carpet and they'll forget half of what they were supposed to grab, and then they'll have to get up and they'll have to go back and get it. So really holding on to those multi-step directions becomes very difficult too.
I just had a little bit of a flashback to one of my middle school teachers. Mrs. Crenshaw was her name. Wonderful teacher. And, one of the ways that she incorporated, and I know we're not to that part yet, that to help us remember the materials we needed was every day we needed a pencil, a black or blue pen, and a red pen. And so she said, bring your lead, your red, or your black and blue. And so anybody who ever had Mrs. Crenshaw knew to bring your lead, your red, and your black and blue. Not the Mrs. Crenshaw and Romeo. This is a different Mrs. Crenshaw. But
yeah, those rhymes, songs, all of that stuff helps you remember.
Helpful.
And look at you. Even now you're remembering that, right?
Yeah, 50, no, I'm just kidding, 40 years later. Yeah, your lead, your red, and your black and blue.
It's a good strategy for sure.
Okay, let's dig a little deeper into executive functioning skills. Executive functioning skills facilitate the behaviors required to plan and achieve goals. The fundamental skills related to executive function include proficiency in adaptable thinking, planning, self-monitoring, self-control, working memory, time management, and organization. What are some ways that you have helped students in your building build upon their executive functioning skills?
So I went to a professional development once, and it stuck with me for a long time, and it's really helped me work with students. So students who have weakness in executive functioning often have a weakness in visual imagery. So if we think, let's say we're driving home, in our minds, we automatically think about driving home. We think about our turns. We do the whole process in our head. That's kind of like our rehearsal. Students with executive functioning weaknesses have a hard time with rehearsing what they're about to do. So they just kind of go about it aimlessly. So sometimes we'll see students just like plop it all in, and we're like, well, did you have plan? Did you think that out? No, because they didn't have a chance to visually rehearse. So what she offered was to like the need, do, done method. So she said, okay, sit with a student and you have them say what it's supposed to look like when it's done, and then they list it out. And then what you need, the next step is look at what you need to do, list it out. And then you do what do you need. So then that way they're working backwards, and then they're facilitating their visual rehearsal in their head to understand, okay, these are the steps I need to do to make it look like this. Because oftentimes our students don't know what the end product is supposed to look like. So we need to help them kind of see what it's supposed to look like so they can work toward that. That was one of my favorite things that I learned from that professional development, and it's really helped a lot of parents too when I'm in meetings with them, is, have them see what it looks like when it's done. Or if you want the room clean, sometimes the to-do lists are overwhelming. If you want the room to look clean, you give them a picture of what the room's supposed to look like clean, and then that's what happens. Or in the classroom, this is what your desk is supposed to look like. Match the picture. So I often will say match the picture. And the same with like time management with older students. The time is a very hard thing for students, especially if they have executive functioning weaknesses. So having them really look not at the clock and understand how much time things are actually taking, and help them break it down for them, and manage their day with like a daily schedule, not just a calendar schedule, a daily schedule. I'm going to spend from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock doing this, and then block it off. Just really breaking it down for them. That's been really helpful.
So as a question for you at the,
Yeah.
at the elementary level, are you seeing students that are they have too much organization? They, it goes back to that flexibility that they are the rigidness, that they're so organized, and they visualized it, and they planned it. Then at the end of it, if anything changes, now I can't adapt to that.
Yep.
So I'm seeing that more and more at the ninth grade level. So
yeah, no, and I think that when it's so rigid, then it might throw them off because they rely so heavily on that. So if it's done for them all the time, sometimes I think they rely so heavily on that they don't develop those skills on their own to become flexible. So that's why that need, do, done method really is beneficial, because you're making them really go through it. Okay, this is what it looks like done. This is what I need to do. And then this is what I need to complete this project.
At all levels too, I've noticed teachers using, brain frames and mapping outlines, rubrics.
Yeah.
And that really seems to help a lot of students.
Yeah.
Because it's spelled out, what are we looking for? What is the goal? How do you achieve a satisfactory result on this assignment?
Right, exactly.
And I was going to add to that, just with like all levels, even at the elementary, even our youngest learners, we work on setting goals, right? And creating steps to those goals. And those, at the kindergarten level might be really small, and then they kind of build as they get older. But, as they get older, they can practice those self-monitoring skills. They can kind of evaluate if they're meeting their objectives, if they're getting to that major goal. Again, we help with the organization, setting up agendas, making lots of lists. I know at the elementary, creating visual schedules are really good for kids. They can visually see how much time they have to complete an assignment or activity. Going in that same vein, we use a lot of timers, just being able to see that time. This is how much we have. This is all the stuff you have to do, and this is the limit of time. Playing a lot of fun games that focus on self-control and memory really helps as well. And then tied up in executive functioning is also emotional regulation, which a lot of students at the elementary level are still really developing. So teaching different emotions, different coping skills, working on those problem solving skills, and role playing those skills with students really helps develop that executive functioning as well.
yeah, especially when they get older and there is more freedom, and they maybe don't communicate with their parents or guardians as much, and they're they want to be alone in their bedrooms and things like that. And they have their phones or devices. And I find that it's really up to the student to be, have that self-control of, I need to set the stage for the next day. I need to go to bed, but my friends on Snapchat or my friends on Instagram, and I need to do this and this, and this feels good, and this is nice. I'm interacting with people, and because, the social environment can be a student's, main priority. And so they're prioritizing that sometimes above their academics. And now before I know it, it's bedtime and it's 10:11. Now I'm getting into sleep. And so just that self-control of that. And so I know we'll be talking about what parents can do later, but I think helping the students sort of regulate their own, okay, I know I really want to do this, but I have 3 tests coming up this week and I have this assignment due. And that's where some of that self-control and regulation those skills we try to teach the students is not to wait to the last minute, because then you're overwhelmed, and then then other things happen. So if we can be proactive, we can still find time to interact with friends. And I'm avoiding the feeling of being overwhelmed, because now I procrastinated and let everything pile up. So it's giving those students those skills.
Well, and you kind of touched on it too, because sometimes lacking those skills often causes the anxious feelings, like we kind of were talking in the previous episode. Lacking those skills makes us feel anxious because we're having a hard time stopping and controlling our behavior, understanding how to plan appropriately, or even thinking about going to a new place. And if you don't have like the schema, or you're walking into a new restaurant, you get anxious because you're like, well, what's the layout? What's on the menu? You get panicked. So it's kind of like those students are experiencing, because they want to do all those things that you're talking about, those fun things, and then they realize it's caught up to them because they're lacking the inhibition skills to say, okay, I need to stop this right now. I need to come back. And it's just a skill. It's a tool that we need to continue to sharpen and build.
And I know we use a lot of like behavior mapping. So, if a student comes to us and, say they chose to hang out with their friends instead of doing their assignment, and so as a result, they failed a test. Sometimes we'll kind of lay it out like, okay, you made this choice and this would be the consequences if you made that choice. Now, if you choose something else, we kind of lay it all out on what the consequences would be, positive or negative, for them to be able to really visually see like, okay, well, this is why I have to prioritize this certain thing, or studying for this test, or putting my Snapchat away for a little while so that I can study, because as a result there's positive consequences that come out of that.
And also at the high school level, in seminar class, we have lessons on where the students do goal trackers, and they set their own goals, and some of them are in the personal realm, some are academic, some are career related. They do career exploration. They set their career and college goals within that seminar. They do deep dives. And the goal there is to tell them the why, because, kids today, and even as adults, we need to know the why. We need to understand, why would I want to prioritize things? Why does it matter what grades I get? So helping students figure out their why, and helping them, set their goals, I think as educators is hugely important, especially in subjects where the student might not have a lot of interest. Here's where it could help you. Here's your why. Even if it's you have to get your high school diploma, and your next level is going to, you're going to need these types of skills. Here's your why. And sometimes it's explaining students, and then until some of it's a maturity where they get it at, maybe it might be a year or two, but they get it at a later point. But understanding their why, helping them set their goals, helping them, understand where they are in relationship to their goals. So when I reflect on that, the reflection of how did I do the first semester, that's also a lesson in seminar, my reflection. What could I have done better? And a lot of times it is, these executive functioning skills. I should have prioritized school more. And maybe it's my values, maybe it's my goals, but I behaved in a way that went against that, went away from what I want to do, and it hurt me. And understanding, so sometimes they have to also feel the consequences, or those natural consequences, in order to make those adjustments. But because that's helping them understand the why and the reason behind it.
Yeah, those natural consequences are key. Those are the best learning tools we have.
Executive functioning and self-regulation skills depend on 3 types of brain function: working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. These functions are highly interrelated, and the successful application of executive function skills requires them to operate in coordination with each other. Working memory governs our ability to retain and manipulate distinct pieces of information over short periods of time. Mental flexibility helps us to sustain or shift attention in response to different demands or to apply different rules in different settings. Self-control enables us to set priorities and resist impulsive actions or responses. It's important to remember that children are not born with these skills. They are born with the potential to develop them. Some children may need more support than others to develop these skill areas. Growth-promoting environments provide children with scaffolding that helps them practice necessary skills before they must perform them alone. Adults can help facilitate the development of a child's executive functioning skills by establishing routines, modeling social behavior, and creating and maintaining supportive, reliable relationships. It's important for children to exercise their developing skills through activities that foster creative play and social connections. We need to teach them how to cope with stress, involve vigorous exercise, and over time provide them with opportunities for directing their own actions with decreasing adult supervision. I know we started to talk about this, and the great news is a lot of the tools and strategies that we use in school can be used at home as well. What can parents do at home to help their children increase their executive functioning skills?
I'm going to say right from the jump, routines are hugely important. Bedtime routines, morning routines. Helping students establish those routines also helps with memory, because I remember what I do next by what I did last, and having an order to the day, having an order to bedtime, even laying from meal prep to laying out the clothes for the next day, helping students visualize what the next day is going to be like, what I'm going to wear the next day. And, thinking ahead with having, them with their laundry, just think ahead, a week ahead, look at the week ahead. What do I have going on after school? What are the activities? And kind of setting a family routine, an individual routine, a structure to that is the very first thing I can think to do.
I think that's a great idea. And I know for me and my children, the unexpected is uncontrollable. So when we have our routines in place, we can save our energy for those unexpected things that pop up. And it gives us a greater ability to deal with those things that we weren't, aware that they would be coming at us during the week. So I know my kids lay out their clothes ahead of time, and the mornings are so much easier when that happens. We look at the lunch schedule. We look and see, okay, when's a hot lunch day? When's a cold lunch day? And it's those tiny things that add up to make a big impact.
The more preparation, the better, definitely.
I know there are the times where I don't feel like going grocery shopping. And I know if I don't go grocery shopping today, then it's going to be more of a hardship in 2 days. And then if I don't start the week with the groceries I need for meal prep, and then it's kind of a slippery slope. So even, routines are so important. But again, being flexible, that's where I struggle personally, is that flexibility within the routines. And that's one of my personal goals right now, because I have found great success in routine. And, as a counselor, as a human being, with health, everything. But now how do I adapt when something doesn't go the way I think it should go? And I know for me, I get overwhelmed. And I shut down for a period of time when it comes to that topic, not necessarily at work, but, personally, I can't shut down at work, but, when it comes to that topic. And what then happens is I need to figure out a routine, a plan. How am I going to problem solve? Sometimes it's talking it out with somebody. Sometimes it's making a list. Sometimes it's, and I'm not a drawer, but sometimes it's, as an English teacher, I would say if somebody was really struggling, draw pictures of what you're trying to say if I can't get the words out, So if it's someone stuck on an assignment, then, if it's putting a sentence together, what are you trying to say? And if someone can draw, help them draw it out. If it's, now there's so much you can do with video, what is it you're trying to say? Just don't worry about having the perfect word or the perfect plan or just get it out there and then adjust and adapt and tweak it. And so, but the idea is to prevent the shutdown and to keep the initiation, because, there are times where, the teacher will give an assignment and 2/3 of the class will start working, and then a couple of kids are kind of looking around like, I have no idea what to do next. And or they know what to do, and they kind of stare and oh, everyone else is working, I should work, you know.
Yeah.
So so I do think it's important to prevent that shutdown, and then to help keep initiated.
Yeah, I think when I think about changing, I always say change your mindset a little when you're working with students or your kids. You know, sometimes when we see work avoidance, we want to say, oh, they're just not motivated. They're only motivated by social. But we forget that there's so many skills within, you know, initiating work or doing your homework. You know, you have to initiate the homework. You need to stick with it. You might need to ask for help. You might need to organize and plan. All these things are in that one homework assignment. That's a lot going on right there. So it's not necessarily a lack of motivation. It's more so changing our thought process of what skill are they lacking to get started? Do they need help? Does my kid need help initiating the task? Once they're started, they can keep going. Or do they need help planning it out? So chunking it. I think that has helped me understand, okay, this student doesn't lack motivation. They lack the skill set to complete the work. So even as parents, when you're at home and you have a big project and they're just avoiding it, you know, question, is this true avoidance, which that is very possible, but there's also probably maybe a skill deficit that you can tackle. And I think that's a huge help.
And I know we see this a lot with writing, like in particular, because you need a lot of executive functioning skills in order to like plan what you're going to write and what you're going to say, organize your thoughts, figure out what paragraphs they're going to go into, you know, how are you going to write your intro and your conclusion. There's just a lot of planning that goes into it, which can be very difficult. So I feel like a lot of times students will look at the assignment and feel like it's immediately daunting because they really can't break it into steps. They just see that they need this big end product. So again, just like breaking it down.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. If there was one academic area that I witnessed students struggling in the most, it's writing. But that's because you need so much planning and executive functioning skills to make it happen.
Yeah, it's in like at home, you know, you give them a multi-step direction. It seems really simple. It's like, go get your socks and put them on. Well, sometimes students, that's A to B to us, and then that's really A, point A1, A2, A3, A4. There's like 15 steps for them to get to point B, where for us, it's one step. We're like, well, why is that hard? And then just understanding, you know, sometimes as parents and even teachers, we put incentives in place, but those don't build the skill. Like, so if we're not building the skill, the incentives aren't going to work. So understanding what skill they might be lacking or what area they might be having a difficult time in, and then building on that skill and then incentives around that skill development.
And I think as a parent too, I do this all the time with my kids, and I catch myself doing it and tell myself I need to stop. Giving those multi-step directions. Like if I said, you know, go get your socks and shoes and put them on. If that was a struggle, sometimes I have a tendency to do it for them. I will go get, you know, my daughter's socks and my daughter's shoes, and I will do it for her because it's quicker and I need to get going and, you know, we're in a rush. But I think that doesn't develop that skill, right? I'm not having her practice that. So I think a lot of times as a parent, like stepping back, you can provide the support, but stepping back and then walking through it. Okay, you know, let's break it down. I need you to go get your socks. And then have them, you know, walk them back. Okay, now I need you to go get your shoes. Just breaking it down, but still expecting them to be able to do it independently.
I was actually on that same wavelength, you know, with a student struggling too, just even asking for help. And we spend time working with students on how to email teachers, and you can email teachers and how to, you know, how to do some of that. And sometimes when everything's done for them, I could email the teacher for them, but that's not really teaching them how to reach out for help when they need help, and initiate that. And so right now at the 9th grade academy, we've you know had a couple of big meetings on dual enrollment, and I spent some of today helping a student she was having login problems, and she needed some help and support because she's never been a college student. She's a 9th grader. At the same time, you know, she needed to do some of it herself, and she was wonderful. And I could tell that she had a lot of these, you know, executive functioning skills, which is why she was looking to dual enroll as a 9th grader. You know, so other students, they're at different levels, and it's helping them, you know, support them. But not doing it for them, because, you know, those are two different things. And a lot of times, especially at the high school level with some of the subjects, parents, they say, I don't know the content to help them. I don't even know how to help them. And so it's helping us help them help the student.
Yeah, exactly.
And then on top of that, I'm going to say, parents, stay calm.
Yeah.
Because I know it can be frustrating, especially with teenagers, because they don't want your help. Sometimes they need it and they don't want it and they want to do it on their own. It's almost when I remember being, working with wanting to tie my own shoes back when I was like, 3 years old, so it's kind of the same ideas. They want to do it. They want to do it on their own and they don't want your help. But, it's so sometimes it's hard to sit back and watch them and you want to help them. And then sometimes you have to force it on them.
Yeah.
And it can lead to some frustration. So stay, as much as I know it's so hard, but stay calm.
Yeah.
And I loved a lot of what you said about, keeping that consistent routine, because that is so important. And there's a wonderful resource from Harvard University's Center for the Developing Child. Please look it up if you can, because it is really great. It has a lot of fun activities and fun ways that parents can work on those executive functioning skills really without their kid knowing, because they're doing games and different things. Some of the examples they have on there is like playing card games that require players to remember the location of particular cards, like, concentration or memory, where you have to flip the cards over and match them. Playing games that require attention and quick responses to practice paying attention and that inhibition piece, such as, freeze dance, musical chairs, red light, green light, where they have to like do something and then stop. So practicing that self-control. And then like puzzle and brain teaser books that includes, mazes, word finds, matching games, that exercises that attention and problem solving skills. And it requires that working memory and cognitive flexibility. And then also part of that is just building in those self-regulation skills and building that self-control is helping students identify emotions, helping and role playing with them, practicing ways that they can problem solve. Again, making sure we give them that autonomy to try things and not always doing it for them like I tend to do for my kids, and I always have to kind of step back. So I encourage you, if you can, to look up that Harvard University Center for the Developing Child. They have so many great resources, and you can pick actually the age of the child. They have it from like birth through adolescence. So there's lots of fun games that you can pick that will work on those particular skills.
Yeah.
That used to just be, a normal weekend day in the 80s where we would play music and we would wait for it to come on the radio. And then we try to memorize, no cell phones, no internet. We just try to memorize all the lyrics.
Yeah.
Well, who knew you were building skills?
Who knew,
right?
who knew I was building skills back then?
Yeah. Yeah, and along with the resource, if you look up Dr. Sarah Ward, she does a lot on executive functioning, especially for the older students, really with time management and how to set up your planner and all that good stuff. She's done wonders. So she's a great resource as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We're incredibly grateful to MIT and to Romeo Community Schools for helping us share this information. We will have additional mental health and wellness podcasts about once a month during the school year. Chelsea, Kristen, and Kelsey, thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, ladies, for your time and expertise, and to our host, Mary Selden. Up next, as April is the month of the young child, we will focus on the needs of our youngest children and their families with a conversation about our early childhood programs and services that meet those needs. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next week to keep up with Romeo Community Schools. This podcast is powered by the MIT TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than MIT TV. Their in-studio podcast experience allows you to record perfect audio and capture amazing video. That's all right here at the MIT TV of Romeo, Michigan. Contact them now via email for a free consultation and schedule a visit at mit.tvpodcast@gmail.com. That's mitt.tvpodcast@gmail.com.